I don't know, from where I grew up, but like it wasn't that we had the worst of things, right?
Mm,
We were kept okay. It wasn't the greatest, but it was okay because I always figured that with patience, and perseverance, we would be able to live with those things without all the debt and all the crap that comes with getting them. And I think we've
mhm.
achieved a lot of that. There's always room to do more, but I think we've achieved a lot of that.
Ever felt those awkward vibes when religion and money come up? You're not alone. Welcome to Yahweh's Money, the podcast where we tackle the crossroads of faith and finance. I'm Shay Cook, an accredited financial counselor and the CEO and founder of Crusaders for Change LLC. Join us on our journey as we discuss topics like tithing, saving, and conquering debt through religious perspectives. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Yahweh's Money. Actually, this is our season 4. I'm excited to be back. Episode 79, God is good. So thank you for joining us today. Today we're talking about love and legacy, strengthening Black marriages through faith and finance. I'm all about in the season of Black excellence, so I'm really excited about this. Before I introduce our amazing guest today, marriage is really a divine covenant, but what happens when faith, finances, and culture intersect? Let's explore how biblical principles guide love, money, and legacy in Black marriages. So our main scripture for today is Ecclesiastes 4:12, which states, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of these three strands is not quickly broken. So, coming together in a marriage, I've been married almost 26 years, which is crazy. Us two together can, just really take over the world, I guess, if you really want to say that. But anyways, back to our guest, Nathaniel Cook Jr., my husband of almost 26 years. He's amazing, wise. He's a retired Air Force service member. He works for companies, many different companies over the years since he got out of the military. I'm not even going to mention the company he mentioned. If he wants to, he can. But we've done great things together in terms of marriage and money and family. Especially, I would say our best gift and thing we did together was create our daughter, Alana Cook, who is 24. And we traveled all around the world thanks to his military career. I think we've done really well when it comes to money, but we're going to talk about that today. Welcome, Nathaniel, Nate.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, finally, right? Season
Yeah.
4, we finally have you. Well, you weren't always interested, but you were. But I appreciate you being here. We're talking about some deep stuff here and the Bible and money. So, how are you feeling today?
I'm good. As you know, I'm very interested in your topics, but I'm always kind of worried about where to lead us when we have a.
Yeah, we have some, I wouldn't say heated, maybe heated, but sometimes it's deeper than what some people can handle. But because he is so wise, y'all. You're going to see that today. My husband is wise above his age. Even when we were in our 20s, even when we were in our teens, well, I was in our teens, he was in his 20s. I was 19, he was 20. 20.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't that kind of situation, y'all. That is hilarious, Nate. But he taught me a lot about savings. I was really just a spender. He was the saver. And where he comes from, it was very just shocking that he wasn't the opposite of what I was, or he is opposite of what I was. But he really just taught me a lot. I always tell people my husband's taught me a lot around money because I'm not gonna put my parents' business out there, but I just did the opposite everything they did. And I actually did well. But I consider myself a personal financial expert now, but it all started with my husband just teaching me, like, you know what, when we got things going on, we need to save. And I'm not mad at that. So anything you want to add to your introduction?
No, I think that does a good job.
All right, cool, cool.
Take your seat, let the wisdom inherit. Let's hit the rapid fire questions. Say what's on your spirit. Take your seat, let the wisdom inherit. Let's hit the rapid fire questions. Say what's on your spirit.
Now we're going to get into our section of rapid fire questions. We introduced this late last season where we just asked 3 quick questions to see where our guest's head is around marriage or just money and the Bible and the Word. So, what's one financial lesson you wish you knew before marriage?
I wish that I understood and that I knew that it takes a compromise.
Mm,
So when we first got together, I wasn't aware that we should both come to a decision when it came to finances,
mm,
considering where we both came from. So I wish I knew more about actually just coming together with somebody and say, "Hey, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that?" Especially when it comes to finances. But that's about marriage. That compromise is what marriage is about too. So
Exactly, exactly. Instead of one of us saying, "No, we're gonna do this," or the other, and one taking the lead, it's a compromise, it's a joint decision.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, we were raised by parents that were in a different generation, that usually the men, if there was a man in a household, they took the lead, they were the breadwinner, and that's the kinda household I was. My mom didn't have much say what happened to the money, even though she did. But my father was like, he brought the money home and he made a lot of decisions, and you were early on was like, "This needs to be joint," but in the very beginning, it wasn't always like that, but yeah, we
No,
learned.
I think we started to understand that neither one of us is always right,
Mhm.
right? And so you have to be smart enough to understand that, we help each other in different regards. And to be able to step back sometimes and be like, okay, yeah, well, it's fine that I'm not getting my way because it's good for us as a family and not just me as a person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're gonna tell some of those stories about that later, y'all, because I have those for days where Nate was like, "No, we don't need to do this," and I acted like a little kid having tantrums, and then I realized later, yeah, he was right. So, hey, it happens, right? So, next question, how does faith help navigate financial disagreements in marriage?
That's a good question. I'm still wrestling with that. Faith is a central portion of I think of how we handle disagreements in general. To not go extremely deep in it, but I think with your faith in God, it kind of leads you to be more patient and perceptive of
Mm.
the other person. Because that's a big tenet in having faith is just the patience part of it. So
Mm. Yeah, the patience and the peace of it all and just trusting when you don't even know what to trust, or just have to have faith. It's not seen, right? So having faith not only in God, but in each other and individually and in yourself. Because I see a lot of couples struggle because of the way they were raised. They don't have even the trust in themselves. And then they have this partner that they're relying wholly on, and then they don't have any trust in God. So it just gets crazy. So, all right, last question. What's one way couples can build wealth together? Oh, that's good. We still learn that.
if you know, please let me know. I don't know how. Well, there's different ways to build wealth. Doing it as a couple is kind of hard, especially when people are not aligned. So maybe that's the best way to build wealth together is just to become aligned, to develop a vision. And it doesn't have to be the same vision. It just has to be pointed in the same direction.
And they have to complement each other, yeah, which is pointing in the same direction. I agree. I'm reading this devotional, y'all, that really talks about that. And it's a leadership devotional around God and being a great leader. But it always says that, like, you got to have a clear vision for your people to follow. And I think that's the same in a marriage, right? Having that,
Yeah.
like Nate saying, a vision that complements each other, it goes in the same direction. We used to say, sometimes men are on Mars, Venus, wherever a planet they are. We want to come back here on Earth and try to be one and aligned. So, all right. Thank you, Nathaniel. That was great. Rapid fire question section. Now we're going to get into our main discussion around strengthening Black marriages through faith and finance. As most of you hopefully know, God should be the center of the marriage. That's not always the case, but why faith strengthens relationships and finances. I mean, it really comes down to, like Nate saying, having that vision. But where have we struggled with that? Let's get into the real stuff.
With faith and finance,
Yeah.
I think I think that you are stronger in faith than I am. I struggle with faith. Not in the large term of it, but just dealing with the way the world is. Like I have a hard time sometimes absorbing all of it and not being bogged down into it. And that impacts the way I look at everything. So I'm a stickler for like getting insurance for this and getting insurance for that. I'm always worried about the rainy day fund type of situation. So
Mhm.
that's where it always leads me. And that's not saying I don't have faith in things will work out the right way. I'm just always concerned that we won't be prepared for when things don't work out the right way.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to teach our clients. Yep.
So that's where I'm always concerned. And I don't know if that's because, I'm absolutely sure it's because of the way I grew up. Right? I didn't grow up with a lot, and so I was always concerned that there was the rug is going to be pulled out from under us, which is a big concern of what goes on now. And so I'm always concerned that I'm not going to be able to provide, or that we're not going to be able to sustain where we are today. So,
Mhm.
and that weighs on me very heavily. And faith would be a way I could sit back and say, well, no, it'll be okay. I've never been comfortable in that position, but that's what I have you for. So you're supposed to be that bridge, that support to be like, "Yeah, you're okay.
Yeah.
I use you to kind of counterbalance my ineptitude when it comes to faith. So I
Well, that's
lean on
good.
you for that."
Yeah, you do, but I also lean on you for the obviously you're the breadwinner and we provide together. But way I was raised, even though my dad was the breadwinner, my mom is a free spirit, so she was out there just doing a lot, and we had everything we needed and more. When I started dating Nate, and even when we got married, I just was always thinking like, I need all this, and I really didn't. And I didn't take the time to think it takes time to build up. I just remember we were in Germany, and I wanted to. I think let me go back to even Omaha when I wanted to buy that table, the dining room table, and I
What
was
was
just
the
like, it was like,
$8,000,
yeah,
$10,000
yeah,
table?
that table was. And I remember calling my mom and she's like, Shay, I didn't get all this stuff. It took me 20 some years to get all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but we needed a dining room table. We ended up going, I think, Nebraska Furniture Mart, buying like a $400 table that we still have. We don't use it. We save it for our daughter to take to her house whenever she move out. But I remember that. And I was so sad. Like, I wanted that big old table. And then we end up buying a nicer table later on. But I mean, I have so many stories about me wanting something then and now. And Nate's like, no, we cannot do this right now. And just being so sad about it and feeling like, and I think a lot of it came from the shame of people coming to our house. I remember even let's go back to Germany and having the FMO, the furniture management office, family furniture, the rental furniture is military people that listen understand, but those even civilians, when you go certain places, the military will provide you this furniture and it's all hard and it's not comfortable. And I wanted all the nice furniture. And Nate's like, no, we don't need to buy that. So we finally bought our Italian leather set like right before we left. And we still got that now. It was just crazy because I always felt shame about the way my house looked because my mama had all this nice stuff. I always thought from the beginning, but no, she had to build up to it as well. So I thought I was going to come in 20 something, getting married and have a house full of beautiful furniture, shrunks and all the stuff my mama had. It's funny how my mom's a free spirit and she was like, no, Shane, it took me a while to get to that. So I just had a different mentality. But now it's like, but I met people like that, young service members, young people, even outside of the military. They 20 some years old and they have everything, quote unquote, they needed, but they were going into debt. They doing all of that.
Well, let's not forget, that we could have bought those things.
We could have.
Though we could have had a lot of those things, but I don't know, from where I grew up, but like it wasn't that we had the worst of things, right?
Mm,
We were kept okay. It wasn't the greatest, but it was okay because I always figured that with patience, and perseverance, we would be able to live with those things without all the debt and all the crap that comes with getting them. And I think we've
mhm,
achieved a lot of that. There's always room to do more, but I think we've achieved a lot of that. And it was never a place, it was never a portion of me that said we needed it now.
mm,
Because I knew that I guess that's part of the faith that I had, that we would get it later. And it was never about now. It was always, and that's the way I live my life today, right? It's always about
mhm.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Life is, I heard this as a comedian said this one time. He's like, life is not short, life is long.
Mm,
And if you start looking at it like that with that lens, you'll understand that, today can be hard, but tomorrow will come.
yeah.
And so we could have nice furniture today. It's gonna get old, it's gonna get battered, and then, we'll spend all this great amount of money on things that we can't even take with us. And I
Mm,
never looked at it like we should spend all our money on that because again, my way of looking at it, like something's gonna happen. We
yeah.
might need that money. And thank God we didn't because there were things that happened. We needed
Always.
those dollars, right? So again, but that's not about being right or wrong, right? That's just about being cautious and believing that, tomorrow will come and we'll
Yeah.
need it, especially when we are not getting like the things that we got weren't bad things.
No, they
So let's
weren't.
not
They
get
last.
yeah, let's
Yeah.
not get things any confused. Like we didn't go out and buy a bunch of junk,
No, we didn't. We
right? So
didn't.
we just didn't get the greatest of things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It was like tier one versus tier three, like they're really expensive. But we also take care of our stuff too. And I think that matters.
A lot of that is you take good care of me, you take good care of the things that we have of our daughter. So that's a lot of that is you.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, to preserve stuff, whether it's cheap or old or new and fancy, you got to take care of your stuff or
Well,
it'll
it's
just
not
fall
cheap.
apart.
Let's
No,
not say
our
that.
stuff
It
is
wasn't
not
cheap.
cheap. I mean, I guess not. It's inexpensive. Yeah,
Thank you. That's
obviously.
a big
Because
difference.
even some of that stuff we bought from IKEA, it's still there. We still got it. I mean, some of that stuff we got is still
Yeah,
around it. Some of that
yeah,
stuff fell apart.
yeah.
But you take care of it. But I was gonna go back to you even saying like life is long, you right, and just it's long. And we've had a long marriage and I hope it continues to grow and all that. But I just think when I was younger, I know when I was younger, I didn't have faith like that. I don't even consider myself a baby in Christ at that time. I just was living my life. My ego was driving me. I was just doing whatever as a young person. But as I started to get closer to God, things really started to change. I started to be having more faith, obviously, as you start to know God more, and then just grow and just being patient that He's going to provide. I mean, my ego is still there, and it just many different ways it shows up. And but when it came to the money, I really trusted my husband when it came to that because he's a provider. He's always provided from the very beginning until now, and I'm sure in the future. But having that I won't call it a crutch, but having that just what's the word? He's just a provider. He's just always there financially and more. So I didn't have to worry and about that. And so it gave me the freedom to be more. I don't consider myself a free spirited, but give myself more time to fail or get to make mistakes, and knowing that my husband's going to be there to pick me up is a great thing. It's nice to have that. So I appreciate you and thank you for always being a provider. But I also saw that in my father. You know, I see that in my brother and many other. Not, I mean, a lot of people have certain circles of men that don't do that, but I have to say, my uncles, my grandfather, like I've been around men that always provided. So I wouldn't expect myself to be with nobody but somebody who provided in many different ways outside of even financially.
Well, yeah,
So
you were raised by good people, and good people raise good people.
yeah, that's shout out to Reverend Mitchell Toll. So he's an amazing father. So common financial struggles in black marriages. We talk about this a lot and just all the craze from our generation. We're Generation X, y'all, and we got a millennial. No, what's our daughter? Generation Z, or she ain't no millennial. We ain't
I
had a
don't know.
baby.
I can never get it right.
She's a Generation Zer, I think. So no, she's not Alpha. That's our young niece and nephew. Breaking those generation cycles of debt, managing expectations, building generational wealth, which we talked about earlier. There's a lot of struggles in black marriages, if there even is a marriage. Like that's a whole nother conversation, right? A lot of people, there's still a lot of black women out there that are not married, and it's just unfortunately with all the systematic issues in this country. But
Mhm.
we're talking about debt. And what did you see growing up? Did your family have a lot of debt?
No, my family didn't have a lot of debt, but my family didn't have a lot of wealth either. I grew up in a single parent household. So it was just raised by women, black women. So that was a good thing for me. So I got kind of to see that other side of it. But there was never a place or a time when they borrowed money, and that may be a systemic thing because loans and those things weren't really available. But they never really asked for things. We were never on the, I would say, extreme poor side of life. Growing up in Baltimore, but there was by no means wealth in our house. We didn't survive paycheck to paycheck, but it was like every other paycheck to paycheck type of thing. So we had struggle, and I learned to be happy with what I had. I didn't want what my mom had. Right? She didn't have anybody to be there for her. If something happened, something broke, something needed fixed, it was all her. As a single mom, it's difficult, especially for boys, to grow up in that kind of place where you become a man earlier than you need to be a man, and you start picking up traits that are not necessarily masculine, because you grew up in a house of women, and so women solve problems differently than men do. And so I began to solve my problems in that way. They weren't conducive to the way the world was asking me to solve problems. And so I fell behind, right? And so I had to learn how to be masculine and how to solve problems that are more conducive to the way the world expects me to solve problems. As a black man, it's a little harder because you got to deal with that and the racism and everything else that comes into it. So when I learned that and I understood that, I got to be a little stronger in certain areas and be able to be vulnerable in another area. And my wife was there to help me be vulnerable in the areas that I felt that I couldn't be vulnerable in. I still struggle with that, but not as badly as I used to. It's very hard to struggle with that. But when it comes to like breaking cycles of debt, we just I was never I learned to manipulate debt from those women. Like again, they weren't getting loans and things like that, but they never had a lot of money to go around with and to do anything they wanted to do with. So they learned how to manage debt, which I think is a key component of the way I do things now. We don't always
Mhm.
agree on this,
Yeah, we don't.
but I learned to navigate the debt that I keep because I know that I have to live not just for today, but for tomorrow. Like paying off $1 is good to pay it off. But if if you charge me 10 cents for that dollar tomorrow, I'll pay you the 10 cent because I might need that dollar for tomorrow. That's the way I look at it. And I'm not saying it's the best way, but I've always had enough to pay off any outstanding debt that I have. If push came to shove, it's like, okay, you can be debt free if that's what it called for. But if it's not calling for it, I'll pay it off in time. And that way, just in case, God forbid, car breaks down, something happens to our house, I can pull from that fund, and then we don't have to accrue a larger debt.
Yeah, I understand that. But we do have arguments with that, y'all. And that's from the trauma of childhood and seeing parents that had a lot of debt, a lot of credit card debt that argued so much over bounce checks, credit cards, so many other issues. And I know and then going to college and just really taking time I was self taught when it came to learning how to manage finances. And then eventually I got my accreditation in financial counseling. But I just don't believe in paying debt. I use it. I use credit cards because I love the points and the rewards and stuff, but I just was like, I don't want to have to pay the man. Like that's my and I'm sure that came from childhood or something, like hearing my daddy talk about people in a certain way. And so I'm just like, I mean, not to say I ain't never had a credit card that accumulated debt. That's not true because I did earlier on, but once I paid them off, like I strive like monthly to pay all my credit card debt off before the interest hit. Now with the business, that's different because you can write off that debt, you can write off that interest, but not with it personal. So I literally, and I have gotten on Nate like, why you don't pay off that credit card? And he explains what he just explained to y'all right now, and I'm like, I'm still like, it don't make sense to me, but hey. But now it kind of makes more sense because he's like, I got this savings, we might be able to use that. And I'm like, well, I got this credit card and I can use that. Like, and I'll just pay it off with my savings later. So either it both works for us. And I just want to say in this moment that even though we different, you could be different in a relationship and still, like you said, be able to have a good relationship. I mean, we're different people. We have different ideologies and stuff around certain things, but I just don't believe in carrying credit card debt. And I'm sure
I think
again that's from trauma.
our belief is that we manage it differently,
Yeah, we manage it
right?
differently.
And so I think the problem comes in if we didn't believe in managing it at all, right? Like we just forget about it like it's not there, but that's not what happens. So I think we just manage it differently.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and and just how do we deal with helping the Black community build generational wealth? I know being part of NAACP and Economic Empowerment Chair, a lot of people are struggling. But I realized this for years. A lot of systematic and systemic, but so I don't even want to go there. It's just like, how do we teach our daughter? Like I think first we're good role models when it comes to money. She's seen that we've acquired wealth or just accumulated house and which is part of wealth and stuff like that just by being responsible. I think she realizes that. But how else do you think we're teaching her?
Seeing it helps, right? Seeing the possibility exists helps. From where I grew up, I didn't know that where we live today was possible. Crazy enough until I saw where you live and how you guys live.
Hmm.
And so then I was like, okay, the possibility exists, right? So it can happen. All the Black people I knew growing up, we were living, again, we weren't at poverty's doorstep, but we weren't far from it. And so I thought it was natural to have animals in your house that were not dogs or cats, right? Having mice in your home was like something that you grew up with. And it was like,
Um,
it wasn't like I mean, it wasn't saying it wasn't a good thing, but it was something that was tolerated
yeah.
because you didn't have a choice.
Mm.
When I met you and saw your way your family lived, I was like, oh, this is new. This is they don't have mice. It's fine. It's cool that to have. That's a good thing. So it changed my perspective. And I think that we've taught our daughter that. Like,
Mm.
this is a possibility for Black people to live in a way that we live, not always extravagant, but we do indulge in some of the finer things in life that that we can afford. I think we've
Mhm.
also taught that we don't live beyond our means,
Mm-mm.
but we can do some of the things that would be considered luxury to others.
Mhm.
But it's become, which is a good and bad thing, it's become normalized for us.
Yeah, but we prepare for it even though it's normalized. We don't just
Yes,
still
but
go
in
crazy
her
with it.
eyes, that becomes normal.
Yeah, so it becomes an entitlement and privilege for
Yeah.
her. Yeah.
So that's a good and a bad thing, right? There's two parts
Yeah,
to
it
that.
is. Yeah.
So, but she sees again the possibilities that it happens. So that creates a different floor for her.
Mm.
Like, so my floor is to never go back to where I was. Her
Mhm.
floor is where we are.
Exactly, yeah, she never experienced that underneath underbelly of it all.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I lived in my mom's basement, right? And it wasn't the basement that we would consider now, right? We have carpets and no, that's not what it was. It was pretty bad considering where we are today and what we would do in the basement today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my daughter doesn't know that lifestyle. And that's again, that's not a bad thing, but it does set a different standard for her. So anything that she achieves or that she tries to accomplish will start from where we are,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
And
Mhm.
understanding that we do it responsibly
Mhm.
and it's not without its challenges or struggle, but she sees all of those and she sees the triumph and the failures that gives her a better place to start. I don't know if it's about generational wealth, but I
Mm.
think it's about generational understanding,
Mm.
right? Which we have worked hard to acquire,
Yeah.
and for her, it's an entitlement.
Yeah, it is. And just the knowledge of it all and her mother being able to I mean, before Alana went to college, I we did financial counseling that whole summer because I wanted to make sure she was on a budget, spend plan, and like make sure she was responsible for certain things, even though Nate and I paid for her tuition and her room and board. She had to pay for all the other little things. And so her understanding that, and even now she graduated from college, she back at home, she knowing when she move out, because she gonna move out that she needs to figure out what that looks like, and she's already thinking like, "All right, rent, Imma have to have a roommate, where can I live that's safe, but also that I can afford," and but she's really thinking about that. She knows she still has the privilege of her parents, but she know eventually she gonna have to be independent, and we talked about that yesterday. She's like, "I am independent." I'm like, "Yeah, you can take care of yourself, but you're not financially independent yet." So, and she needs to understand that.
Yeah, there's a difference. I think that also that we need to. I mean, the issue that we had with her was we had to set expectations,
Mhm.
and like moving home after college in my generation was something that you didn't want to do. And her generation, I think, is probably necessary considering the landscape of the world. Getting a home and buying a home for $100,000, $90,000, $80,000, whatever it was back then, was normal, right? You
Mhm.
can't do that now.
Yeah.
So expecting somebody to again, her floor is where we are, is our present.
Yeah.
She would not be able to afford a home, but that's
Mm.
her expectation,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
so
Yeah.
that's a part of that bad side that we have to deal with and
Mm.
she has to contend with. But I think we've set a foundation where she understands that you don't get this immediately,
Mhm.
right? You have to there was a workup for it. We didn't
Yeah,
start in this house, we worked up to it.
we sure did.
And so
Yeah,
with her understanding that, then I think she'll be able to accept, okay, this is what I can afford now. And that's the key word now. This is what I can afford now.
for now with your current salary, budget, whatever,
Yeah.
and having an understanding of that, yeah, and not going buying a bunch of new furniture like her mama was trying to do at her age.
Or
So
like a lot of people do now.
a lot of people do now, yeah, so she's gonna definitely get that, that knowledge of it all. So, lastly, I wanted to talk about studies show financial stress is a top cause of divorce, so how can faith shift this narrative? Thank God it didn't happen to us.
How can faith shift it? I
Yeah.
think we just have, you with our beliefs, I think it kind of helps. Like I think there was we know we've gone through our troubles. It's never
Mhm.
been about money.
No, it hasn't, thank God.
And I think that's because we kind of once we got past the initial stuff with money that we had, we kind of decided that that wasn't going to be something that we died on a hill for,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's still important. Now, again, we have disagreements about things, but it's never to a point where it means that we're going to end what we have become together. No, I think that's faith.
His faith, his God, is just seeing what my parents going through, but also just not sticking to tradition. I think for me, I know coming in, I was like, I know in Germany, I'm like, "We gotta have a joint account. We gotta have a joint account. My mom and dad have a joint account." Nate's like, "Nah, we ain't doing that." I was like, "No, what?" I was really mad about that, but we have a joint account now for joint things, but we always kept our money. We had separate accounts too, and then we finally started coming together when it came to investing and stuff. We still working on that, but yeah, and a lot of couples and actually a lot of people in the church used to get me, and that was the shame of it all. A lot of people was like, "You ain't got no joint account. What's wrong with y'all?" Like, what? What are you talking? First of all, I don't even know I was telling them my business. But I was young, right? Just trying to learn everything. And people in that generation really made me, the baby boomers and earlier generation Xers, just really made me feel guilty about not having a joint account. And now I'm meeting a lot of clients that are young and it's like, no, I'm keeping my own account. It's just different. So not being in that tradition of it all and trying to follow certain traditions or standards or stereotypes or whatever. But we made it work for what worked for us.
We got to remember though that requires trust, right? So that's what that the underlying part of that is trust. So if I can't trust you with what you're doing with your account, and you can't trust me with what I'm doing with my account, then that doesn't work at all, right? And so that's a huge key of that. If we're both untrustworthy, and even though we're paying, let's say there's three accounts, mine, yours, and a joint one, and the joint one is doing fine, right? We're paying all the bills we want, but if we don't trust each other with the money that we have in our own accounts, then that doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? Because then I'm worried about you spending frivolously. You're worried about me spending frivolously, and things happening. But if we don't trust what we got going on, then there's so many underlying issues that come from that,
That
right?
is
So
so
I trust
true.
you. I trust that if something happens, even with that joint account goes whatever, that you'll be like, oh, don't worry about it. I got the rest of it because it's here. I'm not spending crazy. We're not doing. We can still do the other things that we want to do, and the same goes for me. And so I think we do need to do better with the investing portion, and the retirement part. And I think that's just something that we have to come together with because we've been doing the joint accounts for so long. But I think we still need to emphasize that there's got to be trust within your relationship, period, in order for that particularly financial way to actually work for a couple, especially Black couples.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I see a lot, and I'm meeting a lot of women now that are making more than their husbands, and that's becoming an issue too. So where it's the trust thing, it really comes down to the trust, or it's a power and control struggle there, right? Where the woman's like, "Nah, I'm making all the money, you're gonna do all this," and the man's like, "I'm the man." So that's another conversation as well.
Oh, but yeah, we don't want to get into it. Like we can get into it, but I think but generationally, women have been taught differently, right? Like you
Yeah.
got to prepare for the guy to do something messed up where you have to leave.
Mm.
That's where the trust portion comes in, right?
That's true.
And
Yeah.
that's for
Yeah.
men too. Like I can't like if I thought that the only reason that you kept money in a separate account was to leave me,
Yeah.
then I wouldn't trust you having a separate account,
Mm.
right? Because that's what would happen back in the day.
Yep.
You would have a joint account, and women would just take a little bit here, take a little bit there, create another account, and then one day you would be gone.
Yep.
And so that not to say that you can't leave, but
Mhm.
I trust that the power of our relationship and our faith that's not going to happen. Not
Mhm.
for that reason,
Not for that reason. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big thing. That's the trust portion of it again.
It is really a trust thing. Yeah, really. Marriage is a reflection of God's love, and finances should be managed with that wisdom, that patience, and faith. I have to say, it takes my husband. He brought a lot of wisdom to this. I mean, as I get older, I'm accumulating that wisdom, but he had that initially and throughout, and the patience has definitely been there. I know I didn't have a lot of patience as we go. I'm having more now, but thank God for God. I always say, thank God for Jesus. Thank God for the Holy Spirit to keep me in faith and just really trusting that my husband's going to hold us down. That's one thing I have to say about Nathaniel Cook, my husband. Like, I ain't never really worried that we weren't going to have no money. Like, he was spending it on something frivolously. And, there was moments where I was worried about the shoes. There was moments where about the bourbon. Even back in the day, I remember the video games and all that. But my husband always made sure the bills were paid. There was never no doubt that the basic necessities were there. We always had food. So that's that form of trust, ladies. And it's just really understanding that, that your husband's going to provide. That gives you a comfort and a peace. And I thank God for that. So, Nate, this was a great conversation. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I just want the world to know that I love you and I
Oh,
appreciate everything you do, and I support you fully. I know it's hard what you do, so you're very appreciated, and I think that hopefully this helps a lot of people.
I hope so too. And thank you. I love you more than you even I think you know. I know I get on your nerves. We get on your nerves, but in all seriousness, you're an amazing husband. I thank you for what you do. You're an amazing father. And I just look forward to growing with you and doing great things. And for everybody listening, I would suggest you have a money date with your spouse or your partner this week and pray over your finances. And just like Nate said earlier, I don't know if he saw this in the notes, but he said it already, aligning with your financial vision, whether it's a little different, just making sure you're going in the right direction. Definitely pray for you all. And thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day. A big thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you found today's chat about the intersection of religion and money insightful. We would love to hear your feedback. Hit that subscribe button or follow the podcast. And please feel free to leave us a review. For the latest Yahweh's Money content, visit us at crusaders4change.org or find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Until next time, stay financially fit and spiritually inspired. And remember, it's always better Yahweh's way.